What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and we are finally back from YCS LA 250th, and this is the best performance that I ever had at a YCS. YCSs are typically a lot higher of a skill level than something like a regional, and while I have topped a regional, I have never topped a YCS. Unfortunately, that remains true, but I did get to almost day 2. I just had to win the final round, but unfortunately on day 1, I did lose round 9, leaving my record at 6-3, so it is what it is, but it being my best performance at a YCS, I definitely wanted to bring you guys the deck profile that I played, and I did play Melffy Sprite, so let's go ahead and show you guys the list. So before we actually show you guys the build, I do want to give some shoutouts, and unfortunately I don't know the names of the players that actually came up with this list. It is something that I saw doing very well in the European tournament, so shout out to you guys over there because this list did come from you. So let's go ahead and show you guys. We are going to be playing 3 copies of Sprite Blue, and the Sprite lineup is pretty much just standard. So we have our 3 blue, we have our 3 copies of Sprite Jet, our 1 carrot, and our 1 red. Now this is actually something that I did debate on before the tournament, was upping the count of both or either of these, and looking back at it, I think I would maybe play a second carrot. Carrot felt really strong this weekend, and anytime I didn't have carrot, I felt like I was just immediately behind. So I think I would definitely probably bump the carrot up to 2, but that is it for the Sprite engine so far. And then we have 3 copies of Nimble Beaver, followed by our 2 copies of Angler. Yes, we are still on the Nimble package. In fact, with this particular variant, the Beaver is the best starter for the deck, so you definitely want to make sure that you max out on it. And then obviously the 2 Angler, you need it for the combo. Then we have our very small Melffy engine with the 1 Caddy and the 1 Penny. I'm going to be showing you guys the combo tutorial at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around for that. These cards are absolutely insane, and they just kind of elevate the ceiling of what you are actually able to do. And then we have 1 copy of Soul Scissors. This card you don't necessarily need to play, but it is a very niche form of disruption. A lot of times your opponents will forget that you actually have this in your graveyard if you summoned it off of something like a Gigantic before you link it away, and then you'll be able to just kind of use it as another interruption if they use any sort of effect to destroy or even run over by battle one of your monsters. You can go ahead and summon this, and then when it is summoned from grave, it will destroy a card. And that's it for the actual monsters. The rest of the monsters are hand traps. We are playing 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. The majority of my rounds were Kashtira, I believe. I don't know, make sure you check out the vlog. I am going to be doing a vlog. It's just going to take a little bit of editing, so maybe you'll see that later today, maybe you'll see it tomorrow. Not 100% sure yet, but it does go over all my matchups, and honestly, I feel like Droll just overperformed all weekend. Anytime I opened this card, it was pretty broken. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom as well. This is just the most generic hand trap. Obviously, we have to respect the branded fusion, but also being able to do things like Ash the Kashtira Theosis, or ashing an opposing Gigantic starter, or, you know, it just has its niche uses. And then we are also playing the Gamma package. Now, Gamma is serving somewhat of a 2-for role here. Obviously, it is also a hand trap, but not just that, it is also a level 2. So spoiler, we are playing E-Telly, meaning that we have another level 2 that we can just use to extend, and that is what is going to allow us to kind of push when we wouldn't be able to push otherwise. But what's really cool about the Gamma is you can actually use it to out opposing Arise Hearts very easily. If you open up a card like Pot of Prosperity, going second into a Kashtira board, the way that the math adds up, assuming that the 3 cards that were banished off the top of your deck weren't a Gamma, so you've got 9 cards out of your deck essentially from you drawing 6 for turn plus the 3 banished. If all 3 Gammas are still in your deck and you happen to have your Pot of Prosperity, that is a 76% chance that you're going to see a Gamma, which the reason that's important is because the Prosperity is going to go to the banished because of the Arise Heart effect, making Arise Heart's mandatory effect activate. When it activates, you can go ahead and negate and destroy it, and that is a very simple and clean out. So this just felt correct to play. That's it for the hand traps, or the monster hand traps. Now we've got our 3 Sprite starter. Obviously, you're going to play your deck-specific E-Telly. The deck is playing a copy of Gamma Burst alongside the Sprite Smashers. Gamma Burst is relatively new, but without the elf to kind of help us in our grind game, going for OTKs and big damage really soon is very important. And pretty much if you Droll them, Gamma Burst is going to win you the game on the next turn. Like, any deck that Droll is actually impactful against, the Gamma Burst is just going to seal up the game, so it just felt really easy, and a really nice and smooth way to go for game. As I said, we are on the 3 copies of E-Telly. This is just another level 2 extender when all else fails. we have our 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, and that is going to do it for the spells. Now we have our 1 Double Cross. This is really good and really important. It's the exact same thing that it used to be used for. Either you can use it as an interruption for your opponent, or you can use it to reborn your own monster, which for this variant is 9 times out of 10 what you're going to do. Again, we will show you that in the combo. And the last 3 are going to be the 3 Infinite Impermanence. It is a 41 card deck. Maybe what I would do moving forward is change the Soul Scissors into that second carrot, but I still have some testing to do. I did pretty well. Very, very proud of how I performed. Let's show you guys the extra. Now, moving on to the extra, it is going to look very, very different from some Sprite extra decks you might have seen in the past if you're not familiar with the Melfi variant. We are playing 3 copies of Gigantic Sprite. The reason this is important is because you want to make sure you can use at least 2, one on your starting turn and one on a following turn. And when you're in a format that is primarily Kashtira, obviously they have Unicorn, they have Mind Hacker, they have multiple ways of ripping out cards. So you need to play 3, mostly because if they can rip 2, you need the 1 to at least attempt to play. If they can rip 1, you want the second for the follow-up. So 3 Gigantic definitely felt very correct. I used all 3 a lot of times in the tournament, so I think it's necessary. Then we are on 1 copy of Melfi of the Forest. This is part of the new combo. What you can do with it is you can search for any Melfi, so you will go ahead and search the Caddy. Stay tuned again for that combo. Then we have an Onibimaru Soul Sweeper. This is just a utility card, gets rid of some things that you might not be able to get rid of otherwise, and just kind of helps you overall get through a board that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get through. And then we have a Zeus package, which is going to consist of a number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito, which is not only just for Zeus, but it is also a very weird OTK because you can just deal a ton of damage with its effect. But the reason we want to use it for Zeus is because you can make the biggest material with it when you have the Downerd as well, because you don't need to use this effect, it just can't be destroyed by battle. So you'll be able to swing, slap the Downerd on top, and then of course make your double Zeus. We are still playing the 2 Zeus for the exact same reasons we were before. Kashtira can rip it out, and this is the most effective way of getting rid of a Kashtira board. So yeah. We are on 2 copies of Sprind. Sprind is more important than ever because now it's not only just a combo extender, but it's actually an interruption that we keep on board for our opponent's turn as well. We used to just get rid of it after we used it, but now we're going to leave it on board because we're going to end with multiple XYZs on our field, so we'll always have that bounce live. Then we're actually playing 1 Nightmare Phoenix and 1 Nightmare Cerberus. These are just utility cards, and they're honestly really strong. One of my games I won because I used the Cerberus to pop a special summoned Fenrir. And then the Fenrir was gone, so it couldn't activate its effect, and because of that, I was able to go for game with the Cerberus, the Gigantic, and a red under Gamma Burst, so that was really strong. And then the final 2 cards are going to be synchros. We have 1 Herald of Arclight and 1 Merry Melfis. These are for the combo. Again, you go into either one of these depending on the situation. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the Herald, but honestly, I was surprised at how often the Merry Melfis came up. But maybe that's just because I lose every dice roll. Out of the 9 rounds that I played, I won 2 dice rolls, so I lost 7, and I made this card quite a bit to just kind of clear cards that my opponent had. What would happen a lot of times is I would put a level 2 on board, E-Telly into the Gamma. I would sink into the Merry Melfis, bounce a card, establish another 2, whether that be like starter or whatever it might be, and then I would link those into Sprind, and Sprind would get me full combo. So yeah, that's the extra. Now, I typically don't show you guys my side deck when I do these videos because that is a perk that I offer to my Patreons, is the ability to see all of my side decks, but this is a little bit of a special occasion since it is the 250th YCS. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys my side deck. It's nothing really too special, it's pretty much exactly what you would expect, but let's go ahead and talk about it. We are playing 1 copy of Red Resonator. This is the win button in time. Unfortunately, the time rules are what the time rules are, so any way to make sure that you are up in life when that timer is called. This never came up. My rounds only went to time 1 time, and it was my opponent's turn when it went to time, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, unfortunately, like we went into game 3 and there was only a few minutes left on the clock, so there was no way that I was going to be able to get this out, so I didn't even decide it in. It just wasn't really worth it. I'd probably cut this moving forward. I'm not 100% sure what for, but it just doesn't really feel necessary right now. Then we have 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. Now this is a very interesting card because it is incredible against the Kashtira matchup, but I sided this in every single game that I went first, and the reason being was just specifically to counter evenly match. There are a lot of players playing evenly, some even in the main, so I wanted to make sure that my full board couldn't be outed by a single card, so I would always put this in if I was going first, and I wouldn't change that for the world. Definitely saved me in a couple of my rounds. We have a Change of Heart and a Mind Control. This is for the mirror match as well as Kashtira. It really just helps you get rid of problems you wouldn't be able to get rid of otherwise. One thing that really came in clutch was being able to take their Arise Heart, swing with it, and then slap a Zeus on top. And the Zeus would have multiple sends at that point, so really strong. We're playing 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Now, this doesn't feel as impactful against specifically back row decks, but it's incredibly impactful against a Naturia Runic or any other Runic variant, because you want to banish that field spell. If you get rid of the field spell without banishing it, they can always recur it. They have ways of getting it back from grave. If you spin it back to deck, they can obviously search it back from the deck. So you want to banish it, so this was the call for that. Obviously, it is still helpful against those back row decks, but other cards are just stronger. I really wanted to do Twin Twister, but I had to respect the Runic Fountain. Then we have 1 copy of a Pointer of the Red Lotus with 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. These kind of accomplish the same thing, so you don't really need to run 3 Judgment. A Pointer is essentially a Judgment for like half the cost, because if you think about it, Judgment's really there to just stop the 1 blowout, but if you have a Pointer in the draw or the standby, you're just going to rip the 1 blowout. The only time it sucks is if you look at a hand and you see something like double evenly matched, then I mean Judgment wasn't getting it for you anyway. I might as well pay less life points for it, so I think that this was the correct call. And then finally for the side, we have 3 copies of Evenly Matched. I really wanted this to be Lightning Storm, and looking back, I probably should have played Lightning Storm. It was very impactful against back row decks if it were Lightning Storm, that is. But Evenly was there because it was multi-use and versatile. You didn't just have to use it against back row, you could use it against combo decks as well. But I never resolved it once because everybody else had the same idea of putting Evenly or putting Lancia in if you're going first. So every single time I Evenly'd, I got Lancia'd, and it just didn't resolve. So I kind of wish it was the Lightning Storm. Evenly was probably the correct call, but everybody was ready for it and they had the counter. So that's going to be the side deck. Let's show you guys that combo. Alright guys, so we're going to run through this combo pretty quickly because it's pretty simple, but I just wanted to show you guys how absolutely devastating it can be. And there are multiple 1-card combos. It could be Beaver, it can be Starter, and all you really need to be able to do is put 2 level 2s on board, so any level 2 plus a Sprite to special summon pretty much gets you to the same place. If you start with the Beaver, you can end with an additional monster as well, and I'll tell you where that is and how that occurs. But yeah, let's show you guys what it is. We're going to start things off by normal summoning out the Beaver, which will activate its effect and go ahead and summon the Angler from our deck. Now we'll take the Angler and the Beaver, and this is going to immediately go into our copy of Gigantic Sprite. So on our 3rd summon, we're going to also just become Nib-proof. When we activate the effect, our opponent becomes locked out of Nibiru. Does not matter which one you detach because we're never going to look at it again, and that's going to summon the blue from the deck. Once blue is summoned, it's going to activate its effect to search for Jet, which we can then also just special summon and use Jet's effect to search out our copy of Double Cross. Now what we can do is we can take the Jet and the blue, and we can go ahead and link those off into our copy of Sprite Sprind, which will activate its effect, sending the 2nd Angler from our deck to the graveyard. The Angler being sent to the graveyard will be able to activate its effect, which is going to summon out 2 copies of Nimble Beaver. Doesn't really matter where we put them or what position, because once the 2 Nimble Beaver hit the field, we're going to go ahead and immediately overlay them into our copy of Melfi of the Forest. Now, what Melfi of the Forest is going to do is we'll be able to detach 1 of the Beavers, and this is going to search for our copy of Caddy, and believe it or not, that's pretty much the end of the combo. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set our Sprite Double Cross and proceed to end phase. In the end phase, we'll be able to special summon out the Caddy with the Caddy effect and pass to our opponent. Now, this might not really look like that threatening of a field, but let me tell you why it is. So we have a bounce with Sprind because we have 2 XYZs. Now, if we didn't open the Beaver and we had to go another route, we would have to link the Gigantic off into something like the Sprind, so we wouldn't have the Gigantic, but we would still have an XYZ, meaning that the Sprind is still a bounce. We have a potential disruption for our opponent with the Double Cross, but we're actually going to want to save that because what we're going to hope for is when our opponent summons, we're going to use the effect of Caddy, returning itself to our hand and adding out any beast. We're going to go ahead and add our Penny, which as long as we returned a monster to the hand, we can special summon the Penny and immediately synchro using Melfi's from field in hand. Now the reason that's important is we'll go ahead and on resolution summon the Penny. We'll use it to quick synchro itself and the Caddy into a copy of Herald of the Arclight, which acts as a pseudo macro Cosmo as well as an Omni Negate. Now that's why we want to save our Sprite Double Cross, because when we Omni Negate something, we're going to go ahead and tribute it, and then we can activate the double cross to immediately bring back the Herald, and that's going to be a double Omni Negate. But I also did forget to mention that when we use the effect of Caddy to return to hand, that's also going to activate our Melfi of the Forest, allowing us to negate a monster on our opponent's side of the field. So if they did something like Special Summon Unicorn, we return the Caddy, they attempt to Unicorn Rip, this is going to be Chainlink 2 to negate, we resolve, we add our Penny, and then the Penny will summon, we'll get this, we have a double Omni Negate, a bounce, and an effect negate, and that was all off one card. We have 4 more cards in our hand, and we play 12 hand traps, so you guys do the math, we are in a pretty good spot. And there you guys have it. That is going to be my 250th YCS Sprite Melfi deck profile. It was really fun. I did a lot better than I expected. It's no surprise that I've told you guys plenty of times before, I'm really not a fan of this format. Going into it, I honestly was just going to get my pre-reg incentives and just drop from the tournament because I didn't feel like there was any deck worth playing. But Thursday night at 11 p.m. I was put onto this deck and I loved it instantly, and I submitted my deck list and I did better than I've ever done at a YCS before. So that just really goes to show how absolutely incredible this deck is. I genuinely do think this is the best deck of the format. Whether it's this exact build, maybe not, but Sprite Melfi does feel like the way to go. It is the most resilient to hand traps, it plays the most hand traps, and it just feels like you're able to pretty much play both sides of the game. You're able to be offensive, you're able to be defensive, and everything in between. So I just really love this deck. So you guys know the deal. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, before we head out, if you liked the mat that you see in this deck profile and combo tutorial, then do be aware that I am going to be dropping this as my first official merch drop. I'm calling it the Insane Hieroglyph Playmat. You can see that it has the hieroglyphs, which really fits the theme of Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, but dotted in there is also my logo. Hopefully there's some B-roll on the screen right now. I'm not quite sure exactly when pre-orders are going up, but make sure you keep your eyes out because I do want you guys to be able to enjoy this new mat as much as I am. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.